G'day everyone. I have a story proper to follow this, but I wanted to do something a bit light-hearted to set us off on our way. We're going to be discussing the fact that China, in its efforts to look innocent, has set up a third strike at Australia's exports to try and throw us off setting up or supporting an independent inquiry into the what do we call it? The COOF. Oh, fucked if I know why I'm bothering. I don't censor anything else. I didn't censor the word fuck, did I? It's not like I'm monetarising. In any case, that will be our main story. But before we go there, I'd just like to present this piece of work that I've been trying to put together, but I can't get it at more than 6 minutes long. So if you want to go back, you want to go to the story proper, take a look in 6 minutes' time. Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, depending where you are in the world and what time you're picking this up. I'd like to do a State of the World 2020 report. So if you'll hold on in with me, let's do this thing. The State of Politics 2020. Probably a hangover from last year, but still an interesting reflection on this year's politics. Stop, touch me here and here, I have no underwear. This was an anti-rape project aimed at people who really aren't going to understand interpretive dance. Anyway, State of Politics. The State of Healthcare 2020. Ah yes, the NHS. These people put a lot of time into choreographing this and practicing it and making sure they had all the equipment, and they are dancing around with some fairly delicate equipment, making the best medical use of it, putting it all at risk. I know other people have brought up the fact that they are also in their masks and safety gear, making it unusable should there be a need for it. But the equipment alone is an issue. Each piece of equipment there costs the state a fortune. So yes, the state of healthcare, the NHS in the UK putting it to their best. It also shows that these people have nothing better to do with their time. In the meanwhile, the ignorant masses are out clapping. But they're not the only ones. This video is reported as being NHS employees or workers or whatever in the fuck they are, out to have a clap for the NHS. You will note the social distancing, the masks, the safety equipment, or is it the lack of? In any case, these people are the NHS applauding the NHS for doing the job the NHS is required to do in apparently empty hospitals where you can practice dance routines and wave at the windows. This is the same. Essentially is put down as NHS workers standing at the front of their workplaces applauding themselves. They have nothing better to do. And as you see, social distancing, masks, was a little bit better with that one. Still not good. But we move on to, meanwhile, the land of hypocrisy. These people are being criticised by the NHS for going out and celebrating VE Day. These people set up a system where they had a rope with knots at 3-metre intervals to have them at a metre more than is required for their social distancing. By the way, we only have 1.5 metres here in Australia. It's 2 metres, I believe, in the UK. Still, they were set up at 3-metre intervals, dancing down the road in a stretch conga. And the NHS criticised these people for going out and celebrating. I wonder if the concern is that they were out social distancing, or if they were celebrating VE Day rather than celebrating the religion of NHS. The state of education in 2020. Oh yes, this lovely couple.
Morning. What'd I say? Tell me what'd I say? You said, oh, you don't remember. Oh, she doesn't remember. She said, did you have a good run? I said, yeah.
And you guys are throwing around racial slurs for no reason. Like, nobody's doing nothing to you.
I said, are you
Because
okay?
you guys are always starting stuff.
Okay?
We're always okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Always.
Okay, it's a random question.
Always.
Okay.
We are always okay.
But you were screaming this morning on the balcony. You're screaming.
You look like you're like going. Hey, you look like you're like going in and out of it right now.
Now, in the New York Post report on this,
I'm here with you, right here.
it says that these people do this frequently,
I see you
and
right
that
there.
they do things like pour beer over the balcony.
Right there, recording me. I see
Now,
you, nigga. I see you.
these lovely people apparently came down to complain about the smell of bacon.
But you guys understand, like, we're not trying to do anything to bother you guys.
You're the same age as my kids.
We are. We are. So why are you arguing with people that are the same age as your kids?
Listen. I'm a professor at Sac State, dude. I have a PhD. I don't need to be dealing with shit like this.
I have my master's.
Okay.
Fuck you off.
I don't give a fuck. I don't need it either.
All right, then.
Ah, yes, the holier and better than thou. I'm a professor and I have a master's, a PhD. So these people are very special. Now, the professor, the associate professor, has since apologised for this behaviour, even though it is reported as being quite consistent with their average behaviour. And he has said that his wife has gone into rehab. Well, that's very nice. But at the end of this video, he's the one with the beer can. He's the one with the beer can all the way through. He's also the one who threw his beer can at these people's flat. So, I don't see a lovely, sweet, innocent professor helping his wife out. I see a couple of rat bags who think that they are above everyone else. The state of education. Oh, well, that's it for this one. We will move back into the solid topic of this video. So good night, goodbye, good evening, or good riddance. Lovely people. I will. Moving back to the video proper. I wanted to cover this. I actually wanted to just stretch the video. We've managed to get it out to 7 minutes, that first bit, so that's all right. But I wanted to cover this article in the Age newspaper. Let me see if I can find the damn thing. Get myself twisted up here. There we go. The Age tell us there are fears of a third strike. China trade move risks thousands of jobs. Look, I reckon just fuck China. It's time we cut them off. And I'm married to a Chinese national, so, you know, that's quite something for me to say. It's not a small thing for me to say we should cut China off. It's not a small thing for me to speak out against China, but I'm sorry. If you wanted to be taken to be the innocent party here, to have nothing to hide, threatening Australia with trade embargoes, whatever in the fuck it is you're threatening us with, is not the way to go about it. All I see is guilt, and I want you to explain why you feel so much guilt. Anyway, the dairy industry has called a snap meeting with the federal government as fears grow of a third trade strike from Beijing in retaliation for Australia's pursuit of a global inquiry into the coronavirus. Well, it would be nice if China would stop stealing our dairy products, primarily the stuff we put together for babies, the powdered milk products for babies. If you would stop stealing that, maybe we could have a reasonable trade in dairy with you. China, on Thursday, launched its second trade investigation in as many days, hitting 4 of Australia's largest abattoirs for technical infringements and putting 200 million a month in trade and thousands of jobs under threat. Yeah, it's time to tell China to fuck off. They are too volatile a client. The move followed an anti-dumping investigation on Monday, which could see 600 million worth of Australian barley hit with tariffs of up to 80%. Way too volatile a client. If I had clients this volatile through my business, I wouldn't trade with them. I would find someone else to trade with or something else to do with my life. Trade Minister Simon Birmingham has asked for a phone call from his Chinese counterpart Zhongshan to resolve the situation as relations between the two countries sour. Let them sour. Fuck the Chinese. They've got no right to be fucking with our, and not for the first time, but it'll come up, to be fucking with our trade just because we're asking for a probe into the origins of the COVID-19. Because that seems a reasonable thing to be looking at. And if China really was an innocent party in this, if they did make mistakes, but they weren't deliberate mistakes, then what harm? And as you would be investigating China, your chances of finding the truth is probably very limited anyway. So why not just say yes instead of threatening us? Senator Birmingham and Mr. I should pronounce these Chinese names better. I do have Chinese relations. Spoke in Shanghai in November, but strained diplomatic tensions have escalated further since then. China's ambassador, Zheng Jing, has warned that Chinese customers could boycott Australian products. Yes, they could, because the Chinese government owns the narrative in China. They own all the media. They dictate what the media will put out in its messages. And if they say China is evil, and you can bet your ass they are, then the Chinese people will believe we are evil, and they will boycott our products, such as beef and wine, out of a patriotic sense of duty. No, an enforced patriotic sense of duty. They don't have a choice to know anything else. I have lived in China. I married a Chinese national. I have seen Chinese television and programming. I know the way that social media is licensed in China and managed in China. There is no way the Chinese people have the regular off the street. I know people who use VPNs in China who use them for business and so forth. But the regular run-of-the-mill Chinese has no choice but to believe what they are told by the government about Australia. And how it is their patriotic duty to believe Australia to be whatever the government tells them. The government is concerned the third trade hit from Beijing would be seen as an unmistakable message that China intends to use economic levers to pressure Australia to back down from its coronavirus inquiry. I think the second one was clue enough. I think the first one was a clue for most of us. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce put tariffs on alloy steel tubes imported from the United States and the European Union on Friday. Australia is the only nation to have 2 trade threats put on it since the beginning of the pandemic. It just means they think they don't need our produce as much. They think they can get it from other places. They won't get it as good. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesman Zhao Lijing said on Tuesday night that the restrictions on Australian beef exporters were due to violations of quarantine and customs standards. Yeah, look, I've worked in the places that produce this beef, and I can tell you now, they're pretty strict as standards because they know they have to get to places like China. Mr. Zhao criticised Australia's pursuit of the coronavirus inquiry for political reasons. No, I don't have a political side as such. I certainly am not fond of the Australian government as it exists at the moment. I'm not fond of what is on the opposition side as an offering, but I'm not picking a political side on this. I think that if we do not want these things to happen in the future, then it is worth examining what happened. How did this escape? Where did it come from? Now, I know for a fact, because I hear about it all the time from a Chinese wife who listens to the Chinese media, that the Chinese are trying to blame, within China, are trying to blame the Americans for this. There apparently were some military games in the region where this virus started in the months before the outbreak. And they are claiming that the Americans wouldn't know if they had this disease because they would just think it was the flu. Because people die of the flu in America every year. And apparently nobody dies of the flu in China. But, in any case, the Chinese are saying the Americans don't know if they had it or not, and therefore there's a chance the Americans brought it to China. Well, if that was the truth, investigate it. Mutual respect should be on the basis of good relations, he said. There are no good relations with China at this point. An open inquiry into the coronavirus makes sense. And what China is doing is behaving like a petulant child. You cannot have good relations with petulant children. Dairy industry representatives called an urgent meeting with Agriculture Minister David Littleproud on Tuesday afternoon. Dairy Chief Executive, they call the federal government, don't you make the federal government bow and scrape to the Chinese. I think you're going to have to take this hit for the country. There are also concerns within government and industry that wine exporters could be vulnerable to a dispute. Well, then we should either produce less wine or find other markets. Australia's largest export resources, such as coal or iron ore and coal, are seen as much more secure. Yeah, because the Chinese want our quality products there. They think they can get those other products anywhere else at the same quality, or they don't give as much damn about the quality. So what they want is our best stuff, and they're going to keep buying our best stuff. Well, I'm sorry. Some of our markets, we might just have to find other people. The Chinese are not a stable, reliable trade partner. Wine shipments were held up at Chinese customs ports after Australia introduced foreign interference laws and banned Chinese telecommunication firm Huawei from a 5G network in 2018. So, the Chinese have used these economic threats against us to try and impose commercial deals with telecommunication companies in the past. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about the Huawei 5G and the security arrangements, but I also happen to have Chinese family. I know Huawei are licensed to the Chinese government to provide A, 5G, and B, to provide any sort of services through phone networks or phones. These companies have to be licensed and approved by the government. So, I actually believe the 5G network, if the Chinese are this invested in the in the Huawei company putting the 5G network into other countries, there is a security threat. I have no doubt at all. Chief Executive of Peak Body Australian Grapes and Wine made fears general disruption clear government some time. Yeah, I don't care. China is not a reliable customer. Senator Birmingham and Mr. Littleproud said the government was notified late on Monday that 4 Australian meat establishments, 2 Queensland abattoirs owned by Australia's largest meat processor, JBS, and a Kilroy pastoral company near Brisbane and North Cooperative Meat Company, a casino in New South Wales, had been suspended over labelling and health certificate requirements. Yeah. Bullshit. Just convenient that this is all happening now, isn't it? Andrew Forrester's Harvey Bay beef has not been impacted. Well, that's nice for Harvey beef. Maybe they can help the rest of the industry work out why they were picked on. Maybe there's a government minister trading in this company's beef in China. China, when I first went to China, when I met my wife, we were getting married, I was informed that I might have to pay bribe money to officials to get the paperwork and everything done. And that if we couldn't get certain documents, and there were documents we weren't sure we were going to be able to get, we could possibly pay bribes to have that overlooked. I have no doubt that if a government minister has their hand in Forrest's beef from Harvey Bay, that won't be impacted. That'll still go ahead. I also know people in architectural fields in China and so forth. I know how business is done in China. It's all done over the dinner table, bribes and shaking hands. And this is the standard practice for business in China. So yeah, there might be another reason why this beef in particular hasn't been hit. Thousands of jobs related, yes. Former Foreign Minister Julia Bishop said that the trade dispute was related to Australia's calls for an inquiry into China, was trying to punish Australia with economic retaliation. Yes, and I think we should do the same in return. I don't think we're a big customer of the Chinese, and I do business through China. I import from China, but I think, for the sake of my nation, there are things that we could say we are going to stop. 5G network interference for a start. No Huawei phones for sale in Australia. You choose. Just kick something off the market. And other countries like America will follow suit. And we'll see how long China lasts without its export market. Because China is reliant on its export market. Yes, then the government needed to decouple these issues. If China does impose tariffs, then we should take it to the World Trade Organization, she said. Yes, we should. And we should talk to our allies and partners in the world. The America, the UK, and we should discuss with them what we're going to do in retaliation for China imposing tariffs on our products to try and punish us for wanting an open inquiry. The petulant child needs a smack. Now, I know that this could bring military tensions and so forth to the world, but I think after living through the end of the Cold War, I think the only way we will ever straighten China out, the only way we will ever get China to be anything other than an authoritarian, petulant child state, is maybe we need to go back to Cold War. We need to say, we don't care that you've opened up your economy to the world. We're going to get our cheap shit made somewhere else. You can go behind a cold wall. You can go, we'll establish a Cold War with you. We're going to close down trade. We're not going to have diplomatic relations with you. Whatever the fuck it takes. But if we don't sort China out, things will only get worse. This is these practices that they are putting into gear here now through that have been related to us in this article. This is not new. This is now China's practice. Forced through deals by forcing the hand of economics. And I don't care. They are an unreliable client. They are an unreliable market. You do not base your economy on dealing with unreliable markets. It puts you in a position of imminent threat all the time. All they have to do is shut the border to you and you're fucked. And you know they will do it if they decide they aren't getting what they want from you. Well, stop dealing with them. The government expects the technical dispute to be resolved within a month and is racing to get its response to China as soon as possible. Just don't give in, you arseholes. Our governments have a tendency to give in, and I don't want to see that happen, and I don't think any Australians particularly want to see that happen. Senator Birmingham said Australia would act in its national interest in pursuing the coronavirus inquiry and was treating the separate trade issues on their merits. He said he expected other governments to do the same. Yeah, look, you can try treating them as separate issues, but the Chinese are not. Okay? I think right around the world, people would expect that hundreds and thousands of people have died, millions of people have lost their jobs, and billions of people have had their lives disrupted. Of course, there should be a thorough investigation inquiry into it, he said. I don't give a shit about this, okay? This is not the concern. The concern is that we should have learned some lessons. And if this disease was to start here in Australia next time, right? A pandemic kicks off in Australia. Knowing anything we can about this disease might establish a system by which we can deal with the next one. Okay? That's all it should be about. It shouldn't be about how we've been disrupted. It's about how we need to not be disrupted again. But it's in no way related to export arrangements for Australian beef or the Australian barley or anything else. Well, it is according to the Chinese. China is Australia's largest destination for dairy products, making up 33% of the industry's trade. More than half of Australians' wine exports earnings come from China. Both markets are each worth more than $1 billion. You know, Aboriginal art is worth $5 billion. It doesn't strike me this is a large loss. It strikes me that we need to find something else to do with 33% of our dairy products. Maybe diversify our dairy products. Maybe find other markets for our dairy products. The Chinese aren't big on dairy anyway. They don't eat cheese. It's hard enough to find milk in supermarkets. I swear, most of our milk is being stolen in the form of baby formula. Maybe that's all we're shipping to them is baby formula. And they don't trust buying in China because there's too many people faking the stuff on their market. In any case, $1 billion is not a lot when Aboriginal art is worth $5 billion. Minor hit to our pocket. It's time we stood up and said no. We'll get rid of this display. There we go. Anyway, that was the article we were going to cover. I hope you enjoyed the little bit at the start, just something different I wanted to chuck in. Came out of a few things that were happening around at the time. I got nothing else for you. I'm out of here. I've been the Anti-Theocrat. This is my second video for the day. Not bad effort, given I'm back to homeschooling. May your gods remain fictional, and I will see you in the next one.